Yeah, I feel like every time I see a pop-up, it's when I'm Googling something, I get on the web page, I'm looking for something specific. I can't even think of an example, but like I'm looking for something and you get on the website and then all these things start popping in your face and they're
Hmm.
just distracting. They seem irrelevant. They're not on the topic of what I'm looking for. Without even thinking, I'm exiting out of it before I can even read what it would have
Mm.
said.
Hi, guys, and welcome back to Interacts Grow podcast. So great to be with you as always. I'm your host, Jessmyn Solana, and we do have Jesy and Jackie here today. Damaris, we miss you. Shout out to Damaris, who couldn't make it this week. Um, but today we have a pretty fun topic. I know we've been talking a lot about quizzes, a lot about the new year and AI. So this one is a little old school, but still very relevant in online businesses today. But pop ups and why people love to hate them or hate to love them, I guess you could say. And we're going to talk a little bit through like sort of why they're good, why people don't like them, and then maybe a little bit of like best practices, how they relate back to your quiz, because we do allow that as a function. And I've seen it work really well. So,
Mm.
first and foremost, I guess I kind of want to jump into why we don't like them. And I guess like we could talk about in general, but I know Jackie, you had a really good reason for this. So, take us away.
Yeah, I feel like every time I see a pop-up, it's when I'm Googling something, I get on the web page, I'm looking for something specific. I can't even think of an example, but like I'm looking for something and you get on the website and then all these things start popping in your face and they're
Hmm.
just distracting. They seem irrelevant. They're not on the topic of what I'm looking for. Or they pop up so fast that like when you get on the page, the pop-up is there before the website content is that I'm like, without even thinking, I'm exiting out of it before I can even read what it would have
Mm,
said. I don't know, call me impatient, I guess. But that is why I'm not a fan of pop ups. And I guess it probably is because it's always been a case where it's not the thing that I got onto that webpage for. It's not what I'm looking for. It's not relevant to me. Therefore, it's a distraction. It's in my way. Or I deem that website not credible. Oh, they don't have what I'm looking for. Let me go to something else.
Mm.
right. Do you think that like the instinct to X out has to do with how bad pop-ups started out like years and years and years ago? Like it's kind of a muscle memory to just be, I don't know, like I know I X out when I'm in the middle of reading a blog post or I'm looking at something very specific, kind of like what you're saying, it comes up and I don't even think about it. It's just my hand
Yeah,
automatically moves over there.
no, I think mine does too. And maybe, I don't know, like what were pop ups like back in the day that I hated them so much I started doing that? I think maybe it has something to do with ads too. Like
Hmm.
if you're seeing a bunch of ads on the page and then you get a pop up, I'm like, oh, this is an ad. I don't even want to see it. Like stop tracking me. So maybe it has something to do with that. But now I'm going to pay closer attention. Why can't
Right.
I just make my hand stop and read the pop up?
Something that stuck out to me while you were talking, though, was that you notice it's irrelevant a lot of the time. And I wonder if, kind of like, playing devil's advocate and going on the other side of this, of like why some pop ups actually work really well, is maybe that's the big thing is like it needs to be relevant to the rest of your content. And so maybe there's like a bigger strategy there of, you know, having your business niche down enough to where all of your content is relevant. And so if you're going to have something like a pop-up, people might not even really look at it. How do you catch their attention quick enough so that they're like, "Oh, actually, I do want to look at this," and maybe click on it.
Yeah, and or I would add to that, maybe it's that they're putting a pop-up on all of their pages when it should only
Mm,
relate to a set few. So
right.
it's very easy, especially with InTrack, to enable a pop-up on all of your sites based on the URL that you're using, right? But taking the time to pay more attention to which pages do you not want that to appear on, because there's other calls to actions they should be taking, or it's just more distracting. So taking that extra time to figure out what those pages are and making sure it doesn't appear there. Or adding a hiatus. So like once I see it one time, don't send it to me, please, anymore. Like I didn't. Let me do my thing.
This whole thing just like kind of made me think about why what I really hated about older or pop-ups like back in the day is that sometimes I feel like they used to like take up the whole screen or even
Yeah.
like a big portion of it. And I'd be looking for that little X to click out for so long. And I will say I haven't seen that in a while. So, we're evolving, we're doing better. But I think it used to be really hard to click out of them. And then the other times that I really don't enjoy pop-ups is when I get to the website and they pop up instantly. Like, even if it's like I'm shopping online for a clothing store, I just got to their website. I haven't even had a chance to browse or do anything. And they're like, give me your email and phone number for 25% off. And then I'm like, what if I'm going to browse and find something? Like, do I enter it? Like, what if I don't like their stuff and I don't want to be on their list? And then I usually end up exiting out because I just haven't like bought in yet. So I really wonder if pop-ups are like a little more targeted or, there's a little more thought and science behind them to, maybe pop up once I'm in browsing on product pages where I've gone a little further. But then I know like conflicting, there's always like the statistic that you have like 0.7 seconds to capture someone's attention. So I don't know. I don't know what the science is behind that, but I think I would like it if they popped up a little later once I'm already like invested into the site.
You're making me think, Jessy, of those exit intent pop-ups. So like
Mm-hmm.
you're scrolling on a page, like specifically if I'm looking for clothes or like I'm browsing, shopping, not Amazon, but I'm looking to buy something, or rather I'm browsing to buy things. And I'm like, maybe I don't really see anything. So I go to click X and then it's like, oh, wait a second, we'll give you 25% off. And then if something did catch my attention, right, then it's like, well, this is probably worth subscribing to because these things were kind of cool. I got to peruse them, right? Maybe I'll stay on the page longer, or maybe you'll just get my email and then remind me in an email sequence that you're there and that you have these products.
That's really funny because I actually don't like the exit intent. I think those are the worst ones, and I'll tell you why. Because you're already like on your way out, and then it's like, wow, now you're blocking me from getting to the URL bar or the search bar, whatever it's called these days. Um, I do agree that I think they should come later, but or like on specific pages like you've been browsing and whatnot. But I actually don't like the exit intent because I'm already out, and it's like that doesn't mean that I'm gonna not come back. But now that I know every time I go near the top of the page, you're gonna give me a pop-up, I'm probably not going to come back to this website again. And that's just a personal preference, to be
Yeah.
honest. But I think it's just a valid like point of view for those who are thinking about pop-ups. Of your users when they're on your page, like what kind of experience are they having or what do you want them to have? And I think for like, let's say you browsed, I don't know, maybe I was on the pricing page of someone's services and then the exit intent came up. I might be like, oh, if it's like a bundle or a deal, then yes, maybe. But if I'm like on your homepage and then I, make my way up there and there's an exit intent pop up, I'm a little less inclined to come back because of that.
I also really think it depends on the offer. Like if everything on your website is 40% off for the next 2 days, like tell me that up front. If you're just giving me the standard 10% off of anything, like
Yeah.
maybe give me some time to peruse. But if I think it really just like depends on the offer. Or I don't know, like, how in quizzes we talk about, like, imagine like you're in a store, like, imagine you have a storefront, you're not running like a digital online business. Like, what if we think about pop ups that way? Like, if someone walked into your store, would you be like, hey, 10% off? Or would you let them walk around a bit and be like, oh, by the way, just so you know, like, if you buy 2 shirts, you get a free pair of socks today? Like, what is going to be more? Or as they're walking out the door, like, by the way, did you know we're giving away something, something? So, I wonder if that's a different way to think about it.
I
Yeah.
love that analogy. I think of when I get to the counter and they're like, if you grab another one of these, you actually get like 50% off the second one. And I'm like, okay. All right, don't mind if I do.
Whenever they do that, I'm always like, well, I think I have to because otherwise it'd be silly if I don't. Like, I'm getting this next one for
Right.
50% off. Why wouldn't I?
Right, right. So it's actually interesting because that does make me think of what you said earlier, like the science behind it. Like there is even if you're just giving something for free, asking them to sign up for your email list, whether that's like a form or like upcoming event or even a quiz, like there is like a sales tactic there, right? Because you're selling them on giving you their information. And it's like, hey, well, how do I do that without like being too forward? How do I do that without, being annoying and, giving them enough value in 2 seconds that they're like, okay, cool.
Yeah.
The other thing that you're making me think of as we talk through this is when a pop-up happens too fast, I don't know if it's actually affecting page load speed or if I just feel like it's affecting page load speed because I see the pop-up before the actual website, right? So that's something to consider as well. Because if a page is too slow or if I'm not getting to the thing I need fast enough, I'm out.
What are
Pop-up or
your
not.
thoughts on like because I'm thinking of like it being too fast, if it comes later, like it allows people to, actually get to know who you are. What if they're coming in for the first time and the first thing they see is a pop-up? It's like, I don't even know who you are. Like I don't even know if I'm on the right website. And, maybe not even for like your user experience sake, but for the sake of your email list. You don't want just anyone signing up for your email list. You want people who are like going to stay, who are going to buy from you. And part of the pop-up strategy should be like, I want to capture the right people, not necessarily just capturing anybody. And I feel like the downside or like the misconception about pop-ups, because that's how they started out when the internet was really young, was just like in your face pop-up ads, click here, all this stuff. And now it's like, well, how do we do this in a way where it actually makes sense to me as the business owner and to my potential customers, whether or not they're meant to be here?
I think you're spot on with that. I think just like the way that we've been chatting through this, I think we've all kind of realized that the pop-ups right away when you get to a website is not what we want to see for like, I think for any industry, really.
Yeah, I
Right?
made a few help docs on like how to set pop-ups on different sites through with your quiz, like a quiz pop-up. And Josh, when we were making those, had recommended at a minimum, there's a 5 to 10 second delay on the pop-up because it gives the page time to load, it gives people time to like get settled on the page. So the fact that it's coming up a little bit later is less distracting. I mean, yeah, it's intrusive because it's right there, right? But it is less distracting because it's not like a something happening so quickly when you're trying to just get the website to load.
Right. Right. And with that, I do want to start like segueing into like why pop-ups actually do work, because I actually think, right, if you do it right, and it probably has to do with a lot of like different testing, have people go to your website and be like, what do you think of the layout? Like, am I putting the introduction to myself in the right place? Am I putting, an introduction to my services in the right place? Like, does this pop-up seem like too much? Like, have people actually test out your stuff. But why I think they work though is like when they are popping up at the right time, and I've been on your website long enough, I will actually look at what your pop-up says. And, going back to relevancy, if it's relevant to maybe like a blog post that I'm reading, or I'm on a specific, product line of yours, then I will actually read what's on that pop-up. And a lot of the times it's a great place for people to put maybe, like we were saying, like a discount or a freebie, or it's like, hey, join my email list and you'll hear when the next deal comes out. It's like, oh, actually, like I am interested in that now, and maybe I will put my name and email in.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the times that those are really mainly the times that I'll interact with a pop-up or actually catches my attention is once, even if I'm reading a blog about something and they're asking me something in relation to that blog, or if I've gotten to a point that like I'm still scrolling down on their website, I saw the main header, I read a little bit about like who the person is, and then I'm at their services, I'm kind of like hooked in, because if I exit before I get that far, then I'm probably not the right customer. I left for a reason.
Right. Right.
We see a lot of times quizzes embedded in blogs, right? And I'm going back to the episode that we did with Ron of Ron and Jess Marketing, because they use several different pop-ups on different blogs to showcase their different quizzes. And when Ron was talking about the quizzes that he uses or that he's created, they're all specific to like a hike or a river adventure that you would, rafting, I think they call it, that you would want to take. And I originally thought like, okay, you could just have one quiz, right? Like, what type of adventure do you want to take? Hiking, river rafting, something else? And he was like, no, why would I do that when someone is already on the hiking blog, right? So that's where we go into like, if you're talking to me about river rafting when I'm trying to learn about hiking, not relevant. So
Right.
taking the time to really like pare down, this quiz needs to go on these blogs and that quiz needs to go on those blogs, was really, really smart on their behalf and is working and converting really well for them, because someone's already reading about hikes that they could take, and then they're able to just, oh my God, look, I can just answer a few questions and get the hike rather than reading
Right.
the rest of these 2,000 words. I love that.
Honestly, on that note, after that episode, it made me so even with our own blog, I was like, I have this hunch that we do need to use pop-ups on blogs, because when you have the quiz embedded into the blog post, it looks so seamless that it just looks like an image. I don't even know it's a button.
Mhm.
And I
And
mean,
then
at
next,
least
right? You're like,
right, or
and then
like yeah, like, and it's just like if it were a pop-up, you could see clearly like, oh, this is a separate thing that you can actually like engage with and interact with. Um, but that is a place where I do think pop-ups will work. We haven't like quite figured out how to get that on our blog yet as a pop-up, but that is something that I'm looking into and wanting to get actually like put on our website, because I have this hunch that like all the quizzes that are embedded into our blog posts, nobody's actually clicking on because they're like, oh yeah, cool. You
Yeah.
keep on reading and scrolling.
Yeah.
well, especially on our blog, right? All about quizzes. It's like, oh, this
Yeah.
shot of one that I should be looking at. Never thought of
Mhm.
that. Uh-oh.
Yeah. I feel like
Right.
a blog is kind of, I know we were saying that we don't love exit intent pop-ups, but I feel like a blog is a good place to have a quiz toward the end. Like if this reader like
Mhm.
skimmed or read through this whole blog, like now's your chance. Like they were actually invested in it to hit them with like, oh, you just read a blog about 15 skincare products for acne. Like here's a quiz to find out, what your next skincare routine should be or something like that.
Right.
I
Right.
think that would be cool.
Right.
Okay.
So now that we've kind of jumped into like why quizzes are not, oh my God, sorry. So now that we've jumped into like why pop-ups kind of aren't the best in certain, respects, but why they also work really well. I know unless you've been in our software, you may not know that your quiz can actually function as a pop-up that you set up in the interact settings. So let's talk a little bit about that, because actually in my time here, I've seen people completely hate that feature. I've seen them love that feature. They want more. They like want more variety and so on. But in terms of quizzes, what do you guys think is like a best practice if you want to use it as a pop-up?
Do you mean in terms of what the pop-up looks like?
What it looks like. We could talk about copy, talk about the
Right.
image, all that good stuff.
I think right off the bat, I think it needs to match your branding, same font, same colors. Like that is just the base of it. Like make sure that it looks like it belongs on your website. It's not a spammy ad coming from somewhere else. Start
Totally
there for
agree.
sure.
Totally agree. And then next to that, after that, I would say clarity. In as few words as possible, convey your message to me as clearly as possible. So I know exactly why you're showing me this pop-up, what I'm going to get out of it if I click it. Make me really want to click it. Because that, I came to your page for a certain reason. If you're going to guide me somewhere else, it's got to be for the right reasons. So I would say clarity, and making sure, well, this kind of goes back to what I said before, but just making sure that it's relevant, right? It's clear and it's relevant for the pages that you're putting it on.
I have always liked to recommend to people who use a pop-up for their quiz to turn off the cover page and go straight into show the first question, because you're already asking them a question, right? Make that first question like really easy to answer, and it's more of like a hi, hello, like what I don't know, what's your favorite color? I know that's a terrible first question. It's the first thing that popped into my head, but something super easy to answer that's really relevant to what you have as a service or a product and so on. And instead of like trying to entice them to click that take quiz button, use it as a way to just start a conversation and go right into that first question.
Totally.
Yeah. Correct me if I'm wrong, but with our pop-ups, it doesn't open a new tab or the quiz in the new tab. They can take the quiz right there on the page they're on. I think
Yeah.
that's also a huge thing because I sometimes get flustered when I click on something. When I just got to a website and it takes me to a new link, I'm like, I clicked something spammy, or like something happened, like take me back. So I also think that's a huge plus that right there you get to engage them. And let's say, they change their mind halfway through the quiz or they don't decide to opt in, they don't lose their spot on your website. Like you didn't
Right.
completely lose them. But when I get sent to a new tab, I'm just like, oh, where am I? Wasn't
That's
ready for
actually a
that
really
yet.
good point.
Totally, because I've seen a bunch of quiz pop-ups where you're on the website, the quiz pops up and it looks like the quiz cover. You
Mhm.
click it, it
Mhm.
takes you to the quiz page. It's the same cover. You have to click it again, and now you can start answering the questions. So I like what you were saying earlier, Jessmyn, about if you remove the cover, you could be like, hey, friend, first question, or, something conversational, especially when you're trying to like recommend that they do something, right? Because it
Mhm.
feels like you're talking to somebody and people love to be supported. So support them through the pop-up, through your quiz.
Right. Like, let's say you're an e-commerce store and they click on, I have skincare concern, dry skin. And then they're on the page for, let's say, 5 to 10 seconds. First question pops up and it's like, hey, like, tell me a little bit about the kind of weather you live in, right? Like, super easy, has everything to do with, skin type. If I live in a really dry, deserty area, then yeah, your skin's probably going to be a little bit more dry, and you'll begin to understand, like, one that answers like a region question, like where are my audience most with dry skin concerns mostly living, right? And then two, like you'll be able to really understand how many of those people are like in your audience and so on. And then you can go through like your regular quiz, still give them like the same recommendations, but now it's more of just like, they didn't even know that they were like really engaging in something. Like they didn't have to click that take quiz button and it was in a relevant, place on your website they were already looking at.
Mhm. And that also makes you feel better as the customer because it's kind of like, okay, this company doesn't just want me to buy any of their products. Like they want
Right.
me to buy what's going to work for me and be right for me. And I think that builds a lot of trust.
But even beyond that, Jesse, I don't think they're even making it seem like you have to buy these products. They're like
Yeah.
making it seem like they truly care about our skin, right? They're like, oh
Mhm.
my God, I feel so bad for you. You have dry skin. It maybe the environment is a huge factor in that because you just told me you lived here. These are
Mhm.
products that would help you. They're not even asking for a sale. They're just like recommending what's going to work. And we love that as customers.
Right.
Yes.
Right.
There's a lot of times where I'm browsing for something online and I'm just like, overload with decisions. I'm not sure. I'm like, I should just go in to Sephora and see what they think is going to be the best tinted moisturizer for my skin type and blah, blah, blah. But if someone had that online, I'd be like, perfect. I'm happy to give it a shot.
Especially, wait, I think that's a good point because especially if you're like a small business when you're like you have a skincare line, but you're not like at the level yet where you're selling at a big department store like Sephora or Ulta, and you're like, well, how do I set myself apart from these really giant companies that are selling in another really giant company? And you can just walk into the store. It's like, how do you personalize that experience? And a quiz is great, but then what if it's like, well, not everybody wants to take a quiz all the time, And it's like, well, if they're on a page where it makes sense, go right into question one.
Yeah. It really removes like a big barrier to entry, I feel like, for small
Mhm.
businesses that don't have brick and mortar stores or they're not in Target and, Walmart and all these bigger stores.
Yeah, I agree. I also had another thought though when we were talking about like how pop-ups or the quiz pop-up doesn't take you out of the website. You can still, and this kind of relates to last week's episode, you could still redirect your results. I don't know that I love redirect results if your quiz is in pop-up form, mainly because of what you said, Jesse. Like now that makes me think of maybe it is better to leave it in the results page. The CTA is the URL that links you to whatever like product page or service page or so on. Um, yeah, I don't know. What do you guys think about that?
I feel like that would be a great scenario to require the opt-in, and or maybe you don't have to require it, but you tell them you're emailing the results to them. So it's like within
Mm.
the pop-up they're subscribing and then they're seeing the result page within the pop-up still. You're not taking them elsewhere, but you're telling them all of the information that you're about to get is in your inbox. Go check it out.
Right.
I think when it comes to pop-ups, like, if you've been in our product and checked out our templates, a pop-up is not the time to have like those long results that
Yeah.
people are going to scroll through. You want it, like, I would say, like, they should be able to see like an image, their result, maybe like a few sentences, and then the CTA button. And with that CTA button, you can take them like, okay, like, this was your result. Do you want to browse our products that are relevant to this or whatever? That's when you can redirect them. But definitely don't make a long result page when you're using a pop-up. So I guess if you have one main quiz for your business, you might have to have like a duplicate with shorter versions if you're using a pop-up.
Yeah.
Great tests. All tests
Yeah.
that you have to run,
Yeah. Or just like really figure out like, well, what's the goal of my quiz? And I think quiz pop-ups are great if it's that really top of funnel. You don't even know really who's coming to your website. You're just trying to like kind of get them in the door, get them interested. But if your quiz is a little bit further down your funnel, maybe a pop-up's not the best place for it because they're likely going to be looking around your website, and you might want the longer results at that point, right? Especially if you're like a coach or a consultant. I'm thinking of this quiz where she's an author. I actually posted it on our Instagram today. By the time this episode goes out, it'll be last week. But she uses her quiz as sort of like an intro to her book. And it gives you, it's called the perfectionist profile. So like the results are like what type of perfectionist you are, which is a great segue into like her book. And it's like, well, my book will give you more information and on what all of this means and what that is and whatnot. But this made me kind of think of like, in that example, hers is not a pop-up. It's the first like link on her page, but I could see how like something like that would not be good as a pop-up because you want them to read more. You want them to like look further in. You don't want them to just be like, okay, cool. Maybe I'll wait to see what happens. And like my point is that like depending on the topic, depending on like what your goal is for your quiz, what the point of it is, you may or may not want to use a quiz pop-up.
Yeah, it really depends on like what you're offering, what your business is about. But I feel like people used to just throw pop-ups up whenever. When you do that, we don't like it. When it's the right timing, right place, then we love a pop-up.
I do also kind of feel like kind of going back to like going straight into question one, because it's not asking you to click on a link to go somewhere else, it feels less like that. What you just said, like those pop-ups where it like takes you elsewhere, like it feels really like more like an ad than anything else. So even if you're not using a quiz pop-up, like make it conversational, make it relevant, make it make sense is all I
Or
could really
I was going
say.
to say, or keep it a quiz pop-up, but don't necessarily call it a quiz, right?
Mhm.
Like it's a recommender. It's a chat bot, so to speak, where it's like, hey, I'm here to help you find what you're looking for. Because
I love that.
we're not considering pop-ups. Like, when I go to so many websites now that have the little chat in the corner and it's like, hey, I'm Jackie. If you need anything, just let me know. I'm down here. But I know that's not really you, like it's something
Mhm.
automated. Whereas a quiz, because you're choosing a specific answer, I mean, chatbots do this as well, but it's a great way to get in front of people and move them to the right space, whether you're using it for lead generation or not.
Right.
But again, it has to be purposeful.
I love that.
Yeah, I like vaguely remember like I was Christmas shopping and I think I was looking at like nice Scotch glass sets or something for my dad, and I think a male might not personally want to spend, a lot of money if they're into Scotch or to run like the nicest Scotch glasses. But I remember something popped up. I don't remember if it was the chatbot or what, but I remember the first question was like, hey, are you shopping for yourself or for
Mm,
someone else? And I was like, wow, so they know their target audience is usually someone looking for a gift for someone else. Like this is something you would buy. And I thought like that would even be a great first quiz question to ask depending on what your product is.
Totally.
I love that because if you are purchasing for someone else, you probably know nothing about the
Yeah.
product, or like the type of
Yes.
product, I should say. Not necessarily that brand, but like even the type of product. So you could also use branching logic in that sense to be like, okay, well, if there's, in that case, you're looking for a gift, let me help you figure out, based on like your budget, based on the person you're buying for, what makes the most sense. And maybe even in that space, like when you get those emails from their, newsletters, it's all about like, buy something special for that one person in your life, and not necessarily like, here's the next best Scotch glass for your Friday nights or whatever they are.
And I'm like, I don't drink scotch, but thanks.
But like, how
Right.
amazing if you were to start with a quiz like that, right? And it's like, okay, now we know Jessy is shopping for her dad, and we have her email on Father's Day. Maybe we can capture
Right.
a birthday on Christmas, on, I don't know, any other like days, manly days, whatever,
Yeah.
right? Like, you can like re-email these people and be like, well, you bought this last time. I bet your
Mhm.
dad would really like these stir sticks or these
Mhm.
little like coasters or all of these things that would go with the glasses that you did, or maybe you didn't buy the glasses. So it's like, oh, Jessy, these are on sale. I think your dad would really like them. I would be like, oh my God, he would. Let me get these,
Yeah.
That's
And
very,
you
very
best,
personal.
I'd be
Yeah.
interested when I'm scrambling 3 days before Father's Day and I have not thought of a gift and I'm ready to give him like an Amazon gift card. And I'm like, you know what? This is going to be so much better.
Yeah, totally.
Right. Like that is actually an interesting, I'd love to do that as a topic one day, of just sort of like people in your audience who aren't really your audience, but they're kind of tangential because of someone in their life.
Mm-hmm.
Love it.
I would love if Lululemon sent my husband like reminders during Valentine's Day. Like, she might like this red jacket or this pink headband.
So we're gonna sign Jared up later for Lululemon, their email list.
That would be smart. They should have that.
Hilarious.
I mean, this is sort of off the topic of a quiz, but that could make a really cool pop up, or you could use
Mhm.
a quiz like what we were talking about with Jesse's dad for that, of like Jesse's shopping on Lululemon, and it's like, hey, do you want us to send something to I don't know, like they know your
Ooh.
birthday, right? So it's like, do you want to make your birthday wish list? Like, here it is,
Mhm.
and we can email it out to your friends. I don't know, something
I
like
love
that
that.
though, to just like, because I agree, how many times are we like scrambling last minute because we have to get these gifts, or we want to send something, or we want to buy something really cool for somebody, but we're like, what is that cool thing? Like, this person has everything, If
Yeah.
you were to
Right.
tell me and remind me and show me, then it's just so much easier to make the purchase.
A way to
Yeah.
like expand your audience basically
Oh,
without
yeah,
like, doing too
Yeah.
much.
And
totally.
then I tell my friends about it, and then you have 10 other girls on there who are looking for the same gift. And there you go.
Right. I love it. I love it. Okay, so tying it back to pop-ups before we do a whole other episode within this episode.
Us.
How to get your partners to buy you gifts. Get a
Yeah.
quiz. Put their email in. No, I'm just kidding. But for those who have not been inside our product yet, if you're like new to Interact or you haven't touched on pop-ups at all, I definitely recommend trying out our new Interact AI, because it's automated these days. It's still in a soft launch, so it might have some kinks, but definitely go check it out. That does help you create a freemium account, so you could create your quiz for free and you don't have to pay it until you are ready to publish. But you can actually go and look at those settings and kind of see, like, does a pop-up make sense for me? If I do a pop-up, what do I want my quiz to look like? Play around with it, and then get it up on your website and see where it goes.
Mm-hmm.
All
Love
with a
it.
couple of clicks of a couple button clicks in your Interact account, enable the pop-up. Like, you literally just go to the pop-up tab, enable it. You can customize what you want it to look like, and then it's like you put your URL in and click save, and that's it. It'll go
Do we
on
have
those.
a video we could link, Jackie, like in the
We
show
do.
notes? Okay,
Yeah.
so we will link that. We will link that. But go check that out. And of course, email us if you guys have any questions. You can reach out to customer support on how the quiz pop-ups work, best practices, and so on. And yeah, we'll see you next time.
Bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.